Folks, welcome into another episode of SportsBookReview.com's Roundtable Series videos. We're going to put a bow on the NFL Draft, an exciting action-packed weekend, Thursday night prime time, Friday and Saturday. We're going to pick some winners and losers. Let me bring in my esteemed panel, Flash Watson, Ian Cameron, and Teddy Sobransky. Flash, I'm going to start with you first. It's always fun to start this off, unless you're making fun of my Philadelphia Eagles going with a quarterback at 53. But there were some bad picks in the draft, Flash. I need some bad picks from you here.
Well, there was plenty of bad picks, but it's all conjecture because it's just names on paper. They might come and surprise us. I'm not going to hit them teams that are already down. I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit, Donny, but I am going to go with the Seahawks, going with Jordan Brooks at 27 when he was ready at around 139. That is a massive reach. The other one is the Falcons. The Falcons taking Marlon Davidson. I thought that was just the opposite of what they needed, and they took him far too early. But you look at how many bad picks, and you look at the Packers, you look at the Bears, and you might look at the Eagles, Donny.
Hey, enough of that Eagles bad talk right there. I'm going to bring in Ian Cameron right now. Obviously, it is easy. It's easy to see who picked that bad player, even though they haven't even taken the field yet, Ian. No helmets, no shoulder pads. We're already downgraded in a bad pick. But just from the optics of it, Ian, give me one of those you looked at and say, boy, that pick doesn't make any sense for this team.
Yeah, this is a tough decision, Donnie, to come up with the single worst pick in the draft, but there was a few that were questionable in my mind. The Las Vegas Raiders, Damon Arnett, the cornerback out of Ohio State, was not expected to go that high. The Raiders took him. Was a little surprised by that. Certainly the Dallas Cowboys getting CeeDee Lamb. Look, great speed at the wide receiver position, going to help the offense, but then drafting CeeDee Lamb, it's kind of like someone during the pandemic that are going to spend their money and buy a new car instead of food and essentials. You've got other needs, greater, more impactful needs to fix on this Dallas team. Your defense, your secondary, the offensive line for protection purposes. Going with CeeDee Lamb, I thought they went for, the flashy toy instead of need. The Andrew Thomas draft pick by the Giants, I thought they could have traded back and still been able to pick him up instead of just sitting there at 4 and getting him. But to me, the single worst pick in the draft, in my opinion, was the Tennessee Titans getting Isaiah Wilson out of Georgia, the offensive tackle at 29 overall. Think about where they got him, 29 overall, when some draft analysts actually had him as the 20th or 25th ranked offensive lineman in the draft. Not overall, offensive lineman. And Tennessee's taking him at the 29th overall pick. A big reach to me. And from a value standpoint, the Titans with Wilson is the worst pick.
Teddy was sitting at home there instead of partying at the Bellagio watching. And I got to tell you, sometimes I have it on in the background with the draft, Teddy, and I hear a pick come up. I'm like, whoa, what was that? Let me replay this again and rewind it. Give me one of those that stunned you, possibly with a bad pick in the 2020 draft here, Teddy.
Well, there's one. One stands out above the rest when it comes to the worst draft and the worst pick. Here's a team that went to the NFC Championship game last year. Okay. They're not in rebuild mode. They have a quarterback who is elite, but how do we call him? Mercurial, perhaps? Someone who doesn't react well to some of the nuances that organizations bring. So Green Bay, just a couple of plays away, just a couple of people away from perhaps competing for a title again this year. What do? They draft Jordan Love. They draft Aaron Rodgers' replacement. Not only they draft him, that sends a message to Rodgers. Your clock's ticking on you, bro. It sends a message to the organization. Oh, well, we're going to worry about the new QB. We don't need to worry about any flashy toys for this year. And then you follow that up with A.J. Dillon in the second round, so you get backup with your top 2 picks. Packers, without a shadow of a doubt. You say the Bears and the tight ends. The Packers had the worst draft, period. And Jordan Love, to me, stands out. Even if he ends up being a star, he was the wrong pick for Green Bay this year at this time.
Best picks in the NFL draft, sitting back saying, you know what, Flash? This team really improved themselves getting after it and making a quality selection. Give me some winners in this draft that had some good picks here.
Let me start with the Vikings. I think that Justin Jefferson, everything that the Vikings needed, they ticked off. They had Gladney and they had Cleveland. I also like T. Higgins going to help Joe Burrow out and give him wide options and vertical options deep in T. Higgins. And the Titans, they go for Isaiah Wilson at 29. Well, Christian Fulton was meant to be 24, 25. and they picked him up at 61. So they get an X when they could have took one later, and the one they should have took earlier, they then get at 61. So the Titans maybe just redeemed themselves with Christian Fulton.
Standing ovations for picks here, Ian. When we take a look at it, some organizations just do it better than the other ones. I always like to refer back to the Baltimore Ravens. They know exactly their style on offense. J.K. Dobbins, a phenomenal talent, picking him up in the second round, fits exactly what they need. In this draft, Ian, taking a look at some of these teams, who did you sit back and say, you know what? That's a great pick right there?
Yeah, it was difficult to come up with the best pick. Carolina needed defensive help. They drafted Derek Brown, the defensive tackle at Auburn, who was dominant in the SEC. The Arizona Cardinals also in need of some shoring up of defense. Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, the linebacker, I think is going to be an instant impact player for them. They made great picks. But to me, single best pick came in the first round, not only in terms of filling a big-time need for this team, but also getting this player at the position they did. And that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 13 overall, drafting Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle from Iowa. Just an absolutely tremendous job by the Buccaneers. I mean, Wirfs falls out of the top 5, falls out of the top 10 when a lot of people thought that's where he'd be drafted. Falls right into their lap at 13. A huge need. Tampa Bay's offensive line needed to be upgraded. They need to look after protection for Tom Brady, who's an aging quarterback at the tail end of his career, and Tristan Wirfs has the potential to be a dominant offensive lineman for a very long time to come for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So for me, guys, best pick was Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs at 13.
Take a look at best picks here, Teddy, in the NFL draft. Some teams can really help themselves. Give me one or two of those picks that you said, you know what? That's a great pick for that team right there.
Sure, and I agree wholeheartedly with Ian in the concept of you want to make sure your franchise quarterbacks are protected. The skill position players are all exciting and all that. They get the fans excited. I get excited when a team steals a starter and a potential really good starter in some of the later rounds. And there were two that really stood out to me. In the third round, Arizona got a first-round talent in Josh Jones, the tackle out of Houston. And you have a young quarterback who was running for his life last year. Guess what? Now he's got a tackle to protect him. I thought it was a great pick, Josh Jones. And the Lions got the road grader, Logan Stenberg, the guard out of Kentucky, in the fourth round. And again, he's an attitude guy. I like the attitude offensive linemen, the nasty guys. Detroit, let's just say they've lacked a little nastiness in recent years. I think Logan Stenberg helps them a lot for the 2020 campaign right off the bat.
Flash, it might take years for us to actually settle in and decide who actually won this draft and who actually lost this draft, but I gave you 48 hours to come up with winners and losers from this draft. Give me a team or two that you said, you know what, they nailed this draft, and maybe a team or two that said, boy, unemployment line coming for you guys.
I think the low-hanging fruit is obviously the Ravens and the 49ers, but I'm going to stay away from them because they were massively strong anyway. I think the Vikings, for me, I think they absolutely smashed it. I'm happy to be going with them. I'm going to be cheering them on because I love it when a plan comes together. The losers, I think that's quite easy. That's the Bears, the Packers, and maybe you could take one from the Eagles, Steelers, or Patriots.
You know, sitting back watching the draft here, and you go over some of these winners or losers, it's often easy. Like, you don't even have to scan through. Like, you know what? This team did a really good job. This team did a really poor job because they really stick out on paper. It's funny that we try to grade these, and that's part of the fun of it because they haven't even suited up, put on any helmet, no shoulder pads, no coaching yet. But it's easy for us to look back and be like, you know what? This team won. This team lost. Give me a few of those teams, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, Flash mentioned the Minnesota Vikings. They stand out big time in terms of absolutely just doing a phenomenal job in this draft. Wide receiver Justin Jefferson at LSU to replace Stephon Diggs, check. Jeff Gladney, TCU cornerback to shore up a secondary that was susceptible a bit last year, check. A great offensive lineman potentially for years in Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State at a good value, check. They did an amazing job. So did the Baltimore Ravens, actually. They get J.K. Dobbins. You know, when you've got Mark Ingram, an aging back, Augusta Polar Bear Edwards, you need to address your running back depth. They did that with J.K. Dobbins. They got Patrick Queen in the first round out of LSU, the linebacker, and they might have gotten a big-time steal with Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver out of Texas. A lot of people saying that the Ravens getting him in the third round was a big-time steal. Miami did a good job. They had a lot of draft pieces. They made the most of them. And the Arizona Cardinals deserve a lot of credit in my mind. Isaiah Simmons, as I mentioned, to shore up that defense, which needs some help. It was weak last year. He's going to help get a pass rush for that team. And Josh Jones, Teddy mentioned it, offensive tackle that has the potential to really be a big-time lineman for Arizona and help Kyler Murray out. So those are a bunch of the teams that won. The losers, Green Bay, Teddy mentioned them. Not a very good draft for them. I don't think the Bears did well. I don't think the Seahawks did well. I don't think the Eagles, sorry, Donnie, did the best job they could have done in this draft. So those are the winners and losers for me.
How about this, Teddy? Now, watching this draft, we know you were supposed to be at the Bellagio live, relaxing, watching these players, go on their floats in the fountains, but we weren't able to do that. But was there one team or two that you sat back and said, Teddy, you know what? I'm going to break quarantine. I'm going to drive to Las Vegas Boulevard. I'm going to kick down the front door of a casino. I want to place a wager on this football team because of how well their draft went. And maybe a team that you said, boy, I don't know what they're doing.
I wanted to kick down a casino door to get into the sportsbook to bet against Green Bay. I mean, the Packers literally have gone for that. The draft has turned them from division favorites into division underdogs. And, Flash has been talking about how, and Ian both talking about how good Minnesota's draft was. I agree with that. So we talk about the balance of power shifting in a division. That was real in the NFC North. Two teams got it right. Two teams got it wrong. And at least one of the two teams that got it right, Detroit got it right, being the other one. And Detroit's not going anywhere. So, I mean, the Vikings have cemented themselves as favorites in that division. I think they had a great draft. But if I'm picking my number one draft, it's Arizona because remember, it's not just who they drafted. They also got some guy named DeAndre Hopkins for trading away in a trade. And when you add him to the haul that they got, no team drafted better than Arizona. I thought they nailed it. In terms of overrated draft, I'm with you. On the Cowboys draft, and everyone's giving the Cowboys A and A+, and I'm like, Dallas didn't get what they needed. They needed defensive help, and they got flashy offensive weapons. Cowboys might be a fun team to bet over the total next year, but I don't think they made themselves any more Super Bowl worthy than they were. I would call the Cowboys a loser, not a winner, like many of the draft prognosticators have given them.
If I'm grading winners and losers on this panel, it's all winners. I do want to thank my esteemed panel for coming on today, talking a little bit of NFL draft. Flash Watson, Ian Cameron, and Teddy Savransky for our SportsbookReview.com Roundtable series focused on the NFL draft. And as always, for everything NFL, check out SportsbookReview.com.